Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and it's been a while since I've done a video. I apologise for that. I've been pretty busy doing quite a few other things, but hopefully I'm back now doing weekly-ish content. And today I thought I'd do a relatively simple but hopefully nonetheless interesting video to kick things off once more. It is considered sacrilege amongst sets of rival fans for either a player to play for both the teams in question or for a manager to coach both of them, since you'll be considered as a traitor by one team and have your attitude questioned by the other. However, upon researching for this video, it is actually surprisingly common, and I could have profiled at least 50 really interesting cases if I wanted to, but to prevent this video from being 3 hours long, I've limited it to just 10. I've also set myself a criteria of only profiling one manager per nation, just to make sure that I cover a broad range of teams as opposed to just teams within England, Spain or Germany for example. And if you're going to enjoy this video, of course, don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. But without any further ado, here is a list of 10 managers who managed two very bitter rivals. Number 1. Mircea Lucescu. What better place to start than the inspiration for this video, namely Mircea Lucescu, who is one of the oldest currently active football managers at the age of 76 and is the second most decorated manager of all time with 36 trophies to his name, only behind Sir Alex Ferguson on 49. An intellect who is fluent in 7 languages, Lucescu could have featured on 3 separate counts, as he has managed local rivals Dinamo and Rapid Bucharest, and 2 of Turkey's big 3, namely Besiktas and Galatasaray, but it is his most recent and indeed current managerial post which has landed him in the hottest water of his career. For 12 years, the Romanian was the figurehead of Ukrainian powerhouses Shakhtar Donetsk, transforming them from being second best in the country behind Dinamo Kiev to an unstoppable force in the domestic game. He won 8 league titles, 5 domestic cups and the UEFA Cup in 2009, as well as implementing a focus on scouting young Brazilian players to recruit and then sell on for a huge profit, which has turned out to be a really successful business model for the club, and, most crucially of all with regards to this video, criticising Dinamo at every turn. He left the club in 2016 to join Zenit St. Petersburg, but 4 years later, battle lines were well and truly crossed when, aged 75, he was appointed as manager of Dinamo, the club who, for 12 years, had been his sworn enemy. Fans on both sides revolted against the move, with a statement from Dinamo fans reading, quote, "We wanted to believe this was a silly hoax, but it turns out the club management has lost all remaining common sense, honour and self-respect. They spit into the faces of Dinamo fans and must fully understand the consequences." Close quote. In the face of this vitriol, Lucescu resigned 4 days after his appointment, stating that he couldn't deal with the backlash, but performed a U-turn shortly after and guided Dinamo to the league title in 2020-21, something which would have seemed unimaginable just 5 years prior. He is still employed by the Kiev outfit, but as a result of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the league season has been abandoned with Dinamo in second, 2 points behind Shakhtar, and Lucescu is safely back in his native Romania. Number 2. Brian Clough. There are a few people I could choose from England, such as Harry Redknapp moving from South Coast rivals Portsmouth to Southampton and then back again, or Steve Bruce, who seems to have no managerial loyalty whatsoever, having managed on both sides of the Tyne Wear derby, the Steel City derby and the Second City derby. But in the end, I decided to go for the managerial doyen, that is Brian Clough. He took charge of Derby County in 1967 whilst they were in the second division, but he dragged them out of it in 1969 and guided them to a first division title in 1972. It was at the baseball ground where he garnered a reputation as a hot-headed, confident and abrasive character, but after clashing with the board, he and his assistant Peter Taylor resigned in October 1973, much to the dismay of Rams fans, who clamoured for Clough's return and the board's removal. That didn't happen, and after spells at Brighton and the infamous 44 days at Leeds United, Clough came back in 1975 to manage Nottingham Forest, Derby's biggest rivals. In spite of Forest's board not actually wanting him over concerns about his character and reputation, the arrival was welcomed by Forest fans, with over 4,000 new season tickets being purchased once the news broke. The gamble paid off, and much like he did with Derby, Clough took Forest from second division mediocrity to the first division title, becoming the first manager to win England's top flight with 2 different clubs since Herbert Chapman managed it in the 1930s. But he then went one step further by winning 2 consecutive European Cups in 1979 and 1980. He stayed at the City Ground until 1993, when, upon Forest's relegation in the inaugural Premier League season, he retired, and in 2007, 3 years after his death, the Brian Clough Trophy was created, awarded to the winners of any encounter between Derby and Forest. Number 3. Ronald Koeman. This is an interesting example because Ronald Koeman, who will replace Louis van Gaal as the Netherlands' national team manager after the 2022 World Cup, not only played for each of the Netherlands' big three, namely Ajax, PSV and Feyenoord, but he's also managed each of them throughout his 25-year managerial career. And whilst I'm here with his name coming up, Louis van Gaal, I believe he was recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, so get well soon, Louis, my best wishes go out. After impressing at Vitesse Arnhem, Koeman was appointed by Ajax in December 2001 and took a star-studded side containing the likes of Rafael van der Vaart and Zlatan Ibrahimovic to the double in 2001-02 and created a positive atmosphere within the dressing room. However, Van Gaal's appointment as a technical director undermined Koeman's authority significantly, and after tensions started to grow between him, the players and the board, he resigned in 2005 following a UEFA Cup defeat to Auxerre. In 2006, he returned from a year managing Benfica to take control of PSV, with whom he'd won the European Cup as a player in 1988. But despite having an 11-point lead with 14 games left to go, the team collapsed and only won the title on the final day of the season by 1 goal difference point ahead of Ajax, and he left shortly after. In 2009, he then took charge of AZ Alkmaar, Holland's 4th best team, but despite having won the title the previous season, their owners went bankrupt and the players rebelled, which is not really an ideal concoction for a successful team if you ask me, and after 7 losses in his first 16 games, Koeman was sacked. His reputation was well and truly on the floor, and his appointment by Feyenoord in 2011 felt like a last chance saloon. But his team flourished in a 5-3-2 formation, finishing second twice and third once in Koeman's 3 seasons there. With this, Koeman became the first, and to date only, person to manage and play for each of Ajax, PSV and Feyenoord, and coincidentally enough, he played for and managed them in the exact same chronological order. Number 4. Armin Hetzfeld. Widely regarded as one of the best German managers of all time, Armin Hetzfeld holds a unique distinction of being a club legend at both their classical rivals, namely Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund. The son of a notorious Nazi general, Hetzfeld spent most of his playing career and early managerial stints in Switzerland before catching the eye at Grasshoppers Zurich, which led Dortmund to appointing him as manager in 1991. An expert at marshalling his troops and forging his own identity wherever he managed, in this instance using a unique 3-5-2 formation, he took Borussia to their highest league finish in 25 years as they came runners-up in 1992, but the best was yet to come. Under Hitzfeld's guidance, the Schwarz-Gelben won 2 consecutive Bundesliga titles in 1995 and 1996, and he followed that up with a stunning 3-1 win over Juventus in the Champions League final in 1997, gaining revenge for a 6-1 aggregate humbling in the UEFA Cup final, which occurred just 4 years earlier. After this success, Hetzfeld moved upstairs to take on the role of sports manager at the Westfalenstadion, but the next year he crossed the divide to Bavaria and became the Bayern Munich manager. Over the next 6 years, he became Bayern's longest serving and most successful manager, creating a solid team which was difficult to break down but still found space to entertain and score at will, and he was rewarded with a plethora of trophies. After being denied an unprecedented treble in his first season by that Solskjaer goal for Man United in the 1999 Champions League final and then a loss in the DFB Pokal final to Bayer Leverkusen, Hetzfeld and Bayern licked their wounds and came back stronger, finally lifting the holy grail of the Champions League in 2001 on penalties against Valencia, meaning that he became the first man to win the Champions League since its rebranding in 1992 with 2 different clubs as a manager. He left in 2004 having won 12 trophies, including 4 Bundesliga titles, but he came back for one last hurrah in February 2007 and guided the Bavarians to a domestic treble in the 2007-08 campaign, and both Dortmund and Bayern, rightly, regard him as their legend. Number 5. Juande Ramos. After failed stints at both Spurs and Real Madrid, where his most notorious act was probably signing Julien Faubert on loan from West Ham for seemingly no reason whatsoever, Juande Ramos is now regarded as a bit of a joke in football circles, but this wasn't always the case. After impressing at Mino's Rayo Vallecano and taking them to the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup in 2001, he was appointed as manager of newly promoted Real Betis that same year and took them to a very respectable 6th place finish in the league. He then had a slightly less than successful spell at Espanyol, in which he was given just 6 winless games before being fired. But it was at Sevilla where he rebuilt his reputation. Although of course, Sevilla and Real Betis formed perhaps the most insane and intense rivalry in Spain, maybe even more fierce than El Clasico. The Sevilla fans didn't really seem to mind his one season of relative success with their local rivals, especially after he guided them to their first European honours in their history with a 4-0 win over surprise package Middlesbrough in the 2006 UEFA Cup final, before following it up with a European Super Cup triumph over Barcelona. The Betis fans, on the other hand, or at least a select few of them, took a very different stance on the matter, and during a Copa del Rey encounter between the two sides in February 2007, Ramos was knocked unconscious by a bottle that was thrown by a Betis supporter just after Freddy Canute had put his team ahead, and the match was abandoned. What made matters worse was that the ambulance that came to take Ramos to the hospital was then stoned by some Betis fans, although thankfully he made a relatively quick recovery. By the end of the season, he qualified them for the Champions League for the first time in 50 years and won a cup double of the Copa del Rey and the UEFA Cup. But his biggest mistake, ultimately, would be leaving Sevilla for Spurs in October 2007. Despite winning the League Cup in February 2008, which is still Spurs' most recent major piece of silverware, as many people like to point out, he was universally disliked and unceremoniously given the boot in October 2008 following a winless start to the Premier League campaign, and his career, I think it's fair to say, has petered out ever since. Number 6. Mustafa Denis Lee. Joining Ronald Koeman as the second manager to feature in this video for managing 3 huge rivals instead of just 2, yes, I'm aware that therefore I've accidentally clickbaited you. Mustafa Denis Lee is the only person in history to take control of Besiktas, Fenerbahce and Galatasaray, which assumedly means he has a death wish of some kind. A man who has almost exclusively coached in Turkey and Iran, Denis Lee retired as a player at Galatasaray in 1984 and became the assistant manager to Juande Ramos before taking full control in 1987. He steered them to a league title in his first season before taking them to the semi-finals of the European Cup in 1989, which is to date the best performance by a Turkish club in the history of either the European Cup or the Champions League, but he surprisingly left for Alemannia Aachen that summer. After another 2 years at Galatasaray, followed by 4 years as Turkey's manager between 1996 and 2000, he moved to his former club's arch rivals Fenerbahce and repeated the trick of winning the league title in his first season there. However, poor results at the start of the following season led to him being dismissed, and seemingly with some kind of vendetta lingering in the back of his mind, he was appointed as manager of Besiktas in October 2008 and, yep, you guessed it, won the league title in his debut campaign. Sadly, he had to step down in 2010 owing to health problems, and a difficult third spell at Galatasaray ended after just 3.5 months in 2016. But he is the only man in Turkish football history to win the Super League with 3 different clubs, and given only 6 teams had ever won that competition, that is no mean feat. Although, to be fair, it does help when you manage the 3 most successful teams in that competition's history, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. Number 7. Milovan Zilich. I was honestly stunned to find out just how many people have either played for or managed both clubs in the eternal derby between Red Star and Partizan Belgrade, given how fiercely both clubs despise the other. The most interesting example of them all, or in terms of managers at the very least, is Milovan Zilich, given that he virtually moved straight from one to the other back in the 1950s. Following success with OFK Beograd, with whom he won a Yugoslav Cup, he was snapped up by Partizan in 1953 and took them to second in the Yugoslav League, just 1 point behind winners Dinamo Zagreb in the 1953-54 campaign. He was then the man tasked with guiding Yugoslavia through the 1954 World Cup, and they reached the quarter-finals before being eliminated by eventual winners West Germany under his stewardship, but after the tournament ended, he didn't return to Partizan. Instead, he decided to jump ship and head to Red Star, or as they're more commonly known nowadays, Crvena Zvezda, and it proved to be a wise decision, although perhaps not for his own personal safety. 2 consecutive league titles were backed up by a run to the semi-finals of the European Cup in 1957, in which they narrowly lost 1-0 to Fiorentina over 2 legs to deny them the chance to face Real Madrid in the final, although in all likelihood they probably would have lost anyway. Zilich's achievements did not go unnoticed, and Lazio promptly swooped in to secure his signature, although it would only last a year in Rome before returning to Yugoslavia with Hajduk Split. Zvezda appointed him for a second time in 1975, but this time around things would be less successful as they came fourth in the league and were eliminated in the second round of the UEFA Cup, and both parties agreed to part company at the end of the season. Number 8. Alfredo Di Stefano. Perhaps the most well-known name in this list alongside Brian Clough, it is mostly for Di Stefano's exploits on the pitch rather than the dugouts that we remember him, but he did forge a relatively successful managerial career for himself. Upon retirement in 1966, he moved into coaching and started out at Elche, where he lasted just 14 games amidst board upheaval before leaving. After that, he returned to his native Argentina to manage Boca Juniors, despite having begun his playing career at their eternal rivals River Plate, and he adopted a style that was attack-focused, very similar to how his River Plate team played in the 1940s. He won the league in his only full season at La Bombonera before switching to Valencia, although he spent a year coaching River from 1981 to 1982, and picked up a league title with them to boot. After getting his dream role in charge of Real Madrid from 1982 to 1984, he came back to Boca for one last stint in 1985, but this time around he failed to get his hands on some silverware. Number 9. Leobe. At this point, you might think, well, hang on a minute, I thought you said you were only including one person per nation, and Leobe and Ronald Koeman are both Dutch. Well, to answer your question, whilst I'm including Koeman for my Dutch clubs quota, I'm featuring Beenhakker for his stints in charge of the two clubs which make up Mexico's fiercest rivalry, namely Club America and Guadalajara. He first managed the former in 1994, implementing a style not too dissimilar to the Dutch total football system in the 1970s, with an emphasis on building from the back and counter-pressing when off the ball. They took the league by storm, scoring 78 goals in 33 matches and topping their league group, but out of absolutely nowhere, Beenhakker was stunningly fired in April 1995, allegedly as a result of continuing to play someone who had been locked in contract disputes with the club for some time. America would go on to lose in the playoff semi-finals to Cruz Azul, and Beenhakker even took the club to court with the support of FIFA over breach of contract. He came back to Mexico a year later to take the reins of Guadalajara and beat their fiercest rivals, and of course his former club, 3-2 at the Estadio Azteca for good measure, but he returned to the Netherlands before 1996 was out with Vitesse Arnhem. In spite of his betrayal to Club America and having already taken them to court, he was appointed by them again in 2003, but this time around the magic wouldn't return, as he couldn't even qualify them for the playoffs for the 2003 Apertura, finishing 4th in their 5-team group, for being eliminated in the quarterfinals of the Clausura playoffs to Toluca 4-2 on aggregate. Beenhakker left at the end of the season, never to return. Number 10. Jorge Jesus. Our final entrant in this video takes us to Portugal and Jorge Jesus, who seems to have managed almost every Portuguese club in existence apart from Porto. Nearly 20 years into his managerial career, and after winning the final ever Intertoto Cup in 2008 as Braga manager, he finally got his big break with Benfica in 2009, who had become a sleeping giant at that point, with just 2 league titles in the last 18 years. Jesus guided them to the Primeira Liga title in his debut campaign, and by the end of his time there, he had won 3 league titles, 5 league cups, and the Taça de Portugal, although he did lose in 2 consecutive Europa League finals in 2013 and 2014, as the Bela Gutmann curse struck twice. Stunningly, Benfica asked him to take a pay cut for his new contract in 2015 in spite of his successes, and perhaps unsurprisingly, Jesus refused it, leaving the club to take over at their bitter rivals Sporting Club de Portugal, where he just so happened to have started his career and who offered him a much more lucrative deal. Known for his swashbuckling attack-minded brand of football, it was thought that he could be the one to bring back the glory days to Sporting, but he had a turbulent relationship with the boardroom and club president Bruno de Carvalho, and whilst Benfica enjoyed more domestic dominance under his successor Rui Vitória, Sporting floundered. They slipped from 86 points in 2015-16 to just 70 in 2016-17, and in May 2018, angered at how the club was run, Ultras stormed the training ground and attacked several of the club's players and staff members, including Jesus, who suffered a few injuries. This occurred just 5 days before their Taça de Portugal final against Aves, which perhaps expectedly they lost. And although Carvalho was dismissed by the board in late June of that year, Jesus had already departed by that point, moving to Saudi Arabia to take charge of Al Hilal with just a League Cup medal to show for all of his efforts. And that just about wraps up today's video, looking at a list of 10 managers who managed 2 or more fierce rivals. If you think I missed any out, of course the list was arbitrary and I could have included a few more, but if you think I missed out some other interesting examples, let me know which ones down in the comments below. And as I said at the start, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and you can ring the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a video straight away. Again, I apologise for having been gone for a little while, stuff has happened, but hopefully I'm back. I've got a few ideas in the pipeline, so we'll see how they turn out. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.